The ship floated in the darkness of space like a dead whale in a black ocean. It had no lights. It made no sound. It sent no signals. To anyone watching, the vessel called looked like nothing more than a forgotten wreck from some ancient war. But it was not dead. It was waiting. Deep inside the massive ship, 4,000 human souls lived in near silence. They walked softly through dark corridors. They spoke in whispers. They ate cold food because cooking would create heat signatures. For 19 days they had lived like ghosts, and they would continue to live like ghosts until the order came. Captain Park stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. She was a woman of 47 years, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She rarely smiled. She rarely raised her voice. But when she spoke, every person on the ship listened. The bridge was dark except for the faint blue glow of emergency screens. 20 officers sat at their stations, monitoring systems that appeared dead but were very much alive. They had trained for years for this moment. They had practiced holding their breath while the wolves circled. Lieutenant approached the captain with a tablet in his hand. He was young, only 28, but he was the best tactical officer in the fleet. His mind worked like a computer, calculating angles and trajectories faster than most machines. "Captain," he whispered, "long-range sensors have detected 3 vessels entering the sector. Configuration matches war cruisers." Did not turn around. She continued staring at the main screen, which showed nothing but stars. How long until they reach scanning range? 4 hours, maybe 5. Good, let the crew know. Silent protocol continues. Nodded and moved away to spread the word. The message would pass from person to person, whispered through the corridors like a secret. No intercoms, no announcements, just human voices carrying human words through the sleeping giant. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lee ran her hand along a cold pipe. She was a woman of 53 years, short and thick, with hands rough from decades of work. She knew every part of this ship. She had helped build it. She had watched it grow from blueprints to metal to this magnificent beast that now pretended to be a corpse. "Easy, girl," she whispered to the ship. "Not yet, soon." The engines were cold, but they were ready. Had kept them in perfect condition, like a runner stretching before a race. One command from the bridge, and they would roar to life with the power of a small sun. Her assistant, a young man named, appeared beside her. "Chief, the captain says we have company coming." Smiled in the darkness. It was not a kind smile. Let them come. They have no idea what they are walking into. On the communications deck, Specialist Shin sat surrounded by screens showing nothing but static. He was a thin man with glasses and a permanent expression of concentration. His job was to listen. For 19 days, he had listened to the empty void, catching fragments of alien transmissions, piecing together the movements of enemy fleets. Now he heard something new. Voices chattering in their harsh language. He understood every word. He had spent 10 years learning their tongue, studying their culture, preparing for this moment. "Salvage target detected," one voice said. "Large vessel, no power signatures, appears to be human origin." "Condition," another voice asked. "Dead in space, probably hit by raiders years ago. Good salvage opportunity." Allowed himself a small smile. They had taken the bait. The looked exactly like what they wanted it to look like, a fat, helpless prize waiting to be claimed. He recorded the transmission and sent it to the bridge through a secure wire connection. No wireless signals, nothing that could be detected. Everything on this ship moved through cables and whispers. Captain received the report and read it carefully. 3 cruisers, each carrying approximately 200 crew members. Total enemy force, 600. They expected to find a dead ship with maybe a few frozen bodies. Instead, they would find 4,000 trained soldiers and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. She thought about the people who had died because of ships like those approaching. Colony transports full of families, blown apart in the darkness of space, children who never reached their new homes, parents who never saw their children grow up, 40,000 civilians in the past 11 months alone. The Empire had grown bold. They believed humans were weak because humans preferred peace. They mistook kindness for cowardice. They thought that because humanity did not strike back immediately, humanity could not strike back at all. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Turned to her first officer, a calm man named who had served with her for 15 years. Begin wake-up sequence. Stage 1 only. Keep everything internal. Nodded and passed the order down the chain. Throughout the ship, crew members began their preparations. Weapons were checked. Armor was fitted. Marines moved to their positions near the airlocks, ready to welcome any visitors who might try to board. Sergeant Han gathered her team in a cargo bay that looked abandoned but was actually a staging area. She was 35 years old, built like a fighter, with short hair and a scar across her left cheek from a battle she never talked about. "Listen up," she said quietly. "We expect boarding parties within 6 hours. Our job is simple. Let them in. Let them walk deep into the ship. Then we capture them. Non-lethal weapons only. Command wants prisoners." One of her soldiers, a young woman named, raised her hand. "What if they resist?" "They will resist. They are warriors. They would rather die than surrender." Paused. "But we are not giving them that choice. We are better trained, better equipped, and we know every centimeter of this ship. They will walk into our home thinking it is a grave. We will show them it is a fortress." The soldiers checked their weapons one final time. Stun rounds, shock nets, tranquilizer darts. They had killed before and they would kill again if necessary. But today the mission required living prisoners. Living prisoners could carry messages. Living prisoners could tell stories. Living prisoners could spread fear. Back on the bridge, watched the sensor display. 3 dots were moving closer, approaching like sharks approaching what they thought was a wounded fish. They had no idea that the wounded fish was actually a whale with teeth. "Captain reported, enemy vessels are increasing speed. They appear eager." "Of course they are. They see treasure." "They are scanning us now." "Let them scan. They will find exactly what we want them to find." The scanners would show a massive vessel with extensive damage. They would show minimal power, minimal life signs, minimal threat. They would show a ship that had been drifting for years, forgotten by everyone, waiting to be picked clean. They would not show the 200 missile batteries hidden behind false hull panels. They would not show the 48 rail guns concealed in what appeared to be damaged sections. They would not show the particle cannon running along the ship's spine, capable of cutting a cruiser in half with a single shot. They would not show the 4,000 humans holding their breath in the darkness, waiting for the signal. Looked at the approaching dots and felt something she had not felt in years: anticipation. For 11 months she had watched reports of attacks on civilian ships. For 11 months she had trained her crew and prepared her vessel. For 11 months she had waited. The waiting was almost over. "Maintain silent protocol," she ordered. "Let them come closer. Let them think they have found easy prey." She sat down in her command chair and folded her hands in her lap. They continued to drift, dark and silent, a shadow in the void. But inside that shadow, a beast was waking up. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Tooth of Victory, and smiled at what he saw on the screen. A massive human vessel, dead in space, waiting to be claimed. This was going to be easy. Was tall even by standards, with gray skin covered in ritual scars that marked his many victories. He had commanded this fleet for 12 years. He had destroyed countless human ships. He had never lost a battle. In his mind, humans were soft creatures who talked too much about peace and understood nothing about power. "Scan results, Subcommander," he demanded. Stepped forward with her report. She was younger than more cautious, with sharp eyes that always seemed to be looking for danger. The vessel is approximately 3 kilometers long, human design, possibly military origin but heavily damaged. Power output is minimal. Life signs are faint, maybe a dozen survivors at most. 3 kilometers. Eyes widened with greed. That is larger than anything in our records. The salvage value alone will make us heroes. Commander, I have concerns. Waved his hand dismissively. You always have concerns, speak. A ship this size should have more defensive systems, more escorts. Why is it alone? Why is it here in the middle of nowhere? Because humans are careless and stupid, said. They probably lost it during the border conflicts years ago. Their navigation is terrible. Their military is weak. This ship drifted here and died, and now it belongs to us. Looked at the screen again. Something felt wrong. The ship was too perfect in its appearance of death, too convenient in its location. But she knew better than to argue with when he smelled victory. Shall I prepare boarding parties? She asked. Yes, full combat teams. I want that ship secured within 2 hours. The order went out across all 3 cruisers. Warriors prepared their weapons and armor. Shuttle pilots warmed up their engines. Everyone was excited. A prize this large could feed their families for years. It could buy promotions and honors. It could make legends. On the Iron Claw, the second cruiser, Captain gathered his best soldiers. They were experienced raiders who had boarded dozens of human vessels. They knew how to move through dark corridors. They knew how to find valuable cargo. They knew how to deal with any survivors who might cause trouble. Remember, told them, humans are physically weak. They break easily. If you find any alive, capture them for questioning. The intelligence division always pays well for human prisoners. His soldiers laughed. They had captured humans before. The creatures always begged and cried and surrendered without much fight. This mission would be no different. On the Bloodseeker, the third cruiser, similar preparations were. Commander was more careful than more methodical. She ordered her teams to bring extra scanning equipment, extra medical supplies, extra ammunition. But even she did not truly believe there would be resistance. The ship was clearly dead. Everyone could see that. 4 shuttlecraft launched from the fleet, carrying 32 warriors in total. They flew toward in a tight formation, their pilots scanning for any sign of activity. They found nothing. The human ship remained dark and silent, a ghost floating in the void. Inside, the specialist tracked their approach. He could hear their communications, their casual jokes about what they would find, their arguments about who would claim the best salvage. He translated everything and sent it to the bridge. Captain listened without expression. These creatures were coming to pick apart what they thought was a corpse. They were laughing about the dead. They were celebrating their easy victory. They had no idea they were flying into the mouth of a monster. Shuttles will reach our hull in 12 minutes, reported. Let them land, ordered. Let them cut their way in. Let them walk deep into the ship before we close the trap. Throughout, the Marines moved into position. Sergeant Hand placed her teams at key intersections, hidden in the shadows of corridors that looked abandoned. They wore black armor that blended with the darkness. They carried weapons that made no sound. They breathed slowly, waiting. In the engine room, Lee placed her hand on the main power console. The button under her fingers could wake the ship in seconds. She imagined the faces when the dead ship suddenly came alive. She imagined their screams. Not yet, she whispered to herself. Patience. The shuttles landed on this hull without any trouble. The warriors inside prepared their cutting tools and breached the outer skin of the ship. Air hissed out through the hole, but not much. The interior atmosphere was thin, barely breathable. Another sign that the ship had been dying for a long time. Team leader was the first through the breach. He was a veteran of 20 raids covered in scars and honors. He activated his helmet light and looked around at the corridor before him. Dark, cold, empty, exactly what he expected. Move in, he ordered. 2 teams go forward, 2 teams go aft. Find the bridge, find the cargo holds, report anything valuable. His warriors spread out through the ship, their boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. They found dust. They found debris. They found broken equipment that looked like it had not been touched in years. Everything confirmed what they believed. This ship was dead. But notice something strange. The dust was too even, too perfect. Real abandoned ships had random patterns of decay. This dust looked almost arranged, like someone had placed it carefully to create an appearance. He stopped and looked closer at the floor. There were faint marks in the dust, footprints, recent footprints. Someone had walked here recently and tried to cover their tracks. "Commander," he spoke into his radio, "I think we have." The lights turned red. Every corridor in the suddenly blazed with emergency lighting. Alarms screamed through the halls, and the doors, the heavy blast doors that had been standing open, suddenly slammed shut with the sound of thunder. Spun around, but the door behind him was already closed. He ran to it and tried to force it open. It would not move. He tried to cut through it with his plasma torch. The metal absorbed the heat without melting. This was not normal ship construction. This was military-grade armor. "All teams report," he shouted into his radio. Static. The walls were blocking communications. He was cut off from his soldiers, trapped in a section of the ship with no way out. Then a voice spoke through the speakers, a calm human voice speaking perfect. "You are aboard the United Earth Defense Vessel. You have committed acts of war against humanity. You will not leave." On the bridge of the Tooth of Victory, Sub-Commander heard the same message through the communication link with the boarding teams. Her blood went cold. "Commander," she said urgently, "something is wrong. The ship is not dead." Stared at the screen. There was still dark from outside, still showing no power signatures, but his boarding teams had gone silent. His sensors showed nothing unusual. "Impossible," he said. "The scans showed." And then the woke up. It happened in seconds. Hull panels that looked damaged slid away, revealing pristine armor underneath. Weapon ports opened across the ship's surface like eyes opening after a long sleep. Engine signatures exploded across sensors, power levels that should have been impossible for any vessel. Stared at the readings in horror. Those weapons, that is not a cargo ship, that is not even a warship, that is a fortress, whispered. It is a mobile fortress. The main lights came on, illuminating its true form for the first time. 3 kilometers of pure military engineering, bristling with weapons that had been hidden for 19 days, waiting for this exact moment. Finally understood. The dead ship had never been dead. The weakness had never been real. Humanity had set a trap and he had walked directly into it. "All ships," he screamed into the fleet channel. "Emergency retreat, get us out of here." But it was already too late. The Bloodseeker died first. Captain gave the order with a single word: fire. The particle cannon that ran along the spine of the had been charging for 3 hours, storing energy in capacitors the size of houses. When it fired, a beam of pure destruction shot across space faster than thought. The Bloodseeker had no time to raise shields, no time to turn, no time to do anything except exist for 1 second and then not exist the next. The beam cut through the cruiser from bow to stern, slicing it in half like a knife through bread. The 2 halves drifted apart, spilling fire and atmosphere and bodies into the void. Commander and her crew were dead before they understood what was happening. On the bridge of the Tooth of Victory, Commander watched in frozen horror. The Bloodseeker had been 300 warriors, 300 veterans who had survived dozens of battles, gone in a heartbeat. "Raise shields," he screamed. "Return fire." The Tooth of Victory's weapons came online and began firing at the energy beams and missiles crossed the darkness toward the human ship. They struck the hull and did nothing. The fortress absorbed the attacks like an ocean absorbing raindrops. "Our weapons are not penetrating," reported, her voice shaking. "Their armor is too thick." "Impossible. Focus all firepower on one point." The Iron Claw joined the attack, both cruisers pouring everything they had into the fire, and light and destruction hammered the human vessel. Any normal ship would have been torn apart. They did not even scratch. Inside the fortress, Lieutenant watched the incoming fire on his tactical display. "They are hitting us with everything they have, Captain." "Hull status." "No damage. Their weapons cannot penetrate our primary armor." Nodded. They had been built to withstand attacks from entire fleets. 2 cruisers were not even a challenge. "Target the Iron Claw. Missile batteries 1 through 50. The order went out. 50 missile batteries opened their doors and released their weapons. 200 missiles streaked toward the Iron Claw in a swarm of death. The cruiser tried to shoot them down with point defense weapons, but there were too many. The first missiles hit the shields. The second wave overloaded them. The third wave hit the hull. The Iron Claw exploded in a ball of fire that briefly lit up the surrounding space. Captain and his raiders died without ever leaving their ship. The soldiers who had laughed about capturing weak humans were now dust and memory. 2 cruisers destroyed in less than 2 minutes. Could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet, his undefeated fleet, was being destroyed by a single human vessel, a vessel that had pretended to be dead. "Jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "Emergency jump, get us out of here." The navigation officer worked frantically at his console. "Trying, Commander. The drives are not responding." Ran to check the systems. Her face went pale. "They are jamming us. The human ship is broadcasting a hyperspace disruption field. We cannot jump." Felt true fear for the first time in his life. He was trapped. His fleet was destroyed. His weapons were useless. He had walked into a trap designed by creatures he had always considered inferior, and now he was going to die because of his arrogance. Inside, the specialist monitored the jamming systems with quiet satisfaction. The flagship was stuck in normal space, unable to escape, unable to call for help. The trap was complete. "Captain," he reported, "the remaining enemy vessel is attempting to break our jamming field. They are not succeeding. Keep them locked down. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed." "Understood." The rail guns fired next. Unlike the particle cannon, these weapons were designed for precision work. They targeted the Tooth of Victory's engines, weapons systems, and communication arrays. One by one, they tore apart the cruiser's ability to fight or flee. Watched his ship dying around him. Explosions rocked the bridge. Officers fell screaming. Lights flickered and went out. The Tooth of Victory, pride of the raiding fleet, was being taken apart piece by piece. "Cease fire," he shouted into the communication system, hoping the humans could hear him. "We surrender, cease fire." The shooting stopped. They heard the surrender and smiled slightly. "Hold fire. Keep weapons locked on target." Meanwhile, deep inside the fortress, Sergeant Han was finishing her own battle. The 32 boarders had been scattered throughout the ship when the trap sprung. Now they were being hunted. Moved through the dark corridors with her team, their black armor making them invisible in the shadows. She found a group of 5 warriors trying to cut through a sealed door. They never saw her coming. Stun rounds fired silently. Electric nets flew through the air. They fell one by one, their bodies twitching from the shock before going still. His team moved forward, checking each body, confirming they were alive but unconscious. 5 down, she reported through her secure channel, moving to next group. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out. Warriors who had come expecting easy prey found themselves fighting shadows. They fired their weapons at nothing. They ran through corridors that all looked the same. They screamed into radios that only gave them static. Team leader was one of the last to fall. He had managed to kill 2 human Marines with his plasma pistol before a shock grenade landed at his feet. The explosion of electricity threw him against the wall and scrambled his nervous system. He slid to the floor, paralyzed but conscious, watching human soldiers approach with weapons pointed at his face. "Do not kill me," he managed to say in broken human language. "I am valuable prisoner." The human soldier looked down at him with cold eyes. "You are right. You are valuable. That is why you are still breathing." They bound his hands and dragged him away to join the other captured. 32 warriors had boarded the expecting treasure. Now they sat in a holding cell, defeated and humiliated, waiting to learn their fate. On the bridge, received the report that all boarders were captured. She nodded with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. "Status of the enemy flagship?" she asked. Checked his display. "Engines destroyed, weapons offline, communications crippled. They are completely helpless." "Casualties on our side?" 2 Marines killed, 7 wounded, all stable." 2 dead. Felt the weight of those losses. Every life mattered. But they had destroyed 2 enemy cruisers, captured 32 prisoners, and disabled a 3rd cruiser while losing only 2 of their own. By any measure, this was a victory beyond calculation. She stood from her command chair and straightened her uniform. "Open a channel to the enemy ship. Visual communication." "Channel open, Captain." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Tooth of Victory. It was a scene of destruction. Fires burned in the background. Bodies lay on the floor. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. And in the middle of it all stood Commander, his uniform torn, his face cut, his eyes filled with shock and fear. Looked at him for a long moment. This was the creature who had ordered attacks on civilian transports. This was the monster who had killed 40,000 innocent people. This was the face of arrogance. "Commander," she said calmly, "I am Captain Park of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is destroyed. Your warriors are my prisoners. Your ship is crippled. Do you understand your situation?" Stared at her through the screen. He had expected many things in his life. He had never expected to be defeated by a human. He had never expected to feel this small. "I understand," he said quietly. "Good, then listen carefully. I have a message for you to deliver." Stepped closer to the screen, her eyes hard as iron. "And you will remember every word." Commander stood alone on his ruined bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his crew and the wreckage of his pride. The flames had been put out by the automatic systems, but the smoke still hung in the air like a funeral shroud. Through the main screen, he stared at the human woman who had destroyed everything he had built. Captain Park looked back at him with eyes that showed no hatred, no anger, no satisfaction. That was somehow worse than rage. She looked at him like he was a problem that had been solved, like he was already in the past. "Commander," she began, "for 11 months your fleet has attacked our colony transport ships. You have targeted vessels carrying families to new homes. You have killed civilians who had no weapons, no defenses, no way to fight back." Said nothing. He could not deny it. The raids had been profitable. The humans never seemed to do anything about them. It had been easy. 40,000 people, continued. 40,000 men, women, and children, burned in space, frozen in vacuum, lost forever. Their only crime was being human in a universe where creatures like you exist. "We are at war," said, though the words felt hollow in his mouth. "No, we were not at war. Your empire never declared war. Our governments were at peace. You simply decided that our people were prey, and you hunted them because you thought we were too weak to stop you." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You were wrong." Looked at the screen showing the debris field that had been his fleet. 2 cruisers full of warriors, gone in minutes. He had commanded thousands of raids in his career. He had destroyed ships without counting. He had never imagined that the prey could bite back this hard. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Clasped her hands behind her back. "I want you to survive. I want you to return to your empire. I want you to stand before the High Council and tell them exactly what happened here today. You want me to deliver a message? Yes, listen carefully. She stepped forward, her image filling the screen. Tell the Empire this: humanity has been patient. We extended hands of peace. We negotiated. We compromised. We buried our dead and mourned quietly, hoping that diplomacy would bring change, but our patience has ended. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something cold and deep and dangerous. This vessel is in our ancient stories, it is a beast that judges evil and protects the innocent. We built this ship for commanders like you. We built it to answer attacks that diplomacy could not prevent. We built it to show the universe what happens when you mistake our kindness for weakness. Felt his hands shaking. He had faced death many times. He had never felt fear like this. For every human life taken, continued, we will answer, not with cruelty. We are not like you. We do not slaughter civilians. We do not hunt the helpless. But we will respond with absolute, overwhelming force against any military target that threatens our people. She paused, letting him absorb her words. Thee is not alone. There are 12 more ships like her, scattered across human space, waiting in the darkness. Your intelligence never found them because they were built to be invisible. Your fleet never detected them because they only move when we want them to move. They are watching. They are ready. 12 more, felt his stomach turn. If one ship could destroy his entire fleet, what could 13 do? They could wage a war that would tear the Empire apart. This is not a threat, said. This is a promise. Attack our people again and we will come for you. Not with words, not with protests, with fire and steel and the fury of a species that has learned to protect its own. She leaned closer to the screen. Go home, Commander. Tell your council what you saw. Tell them how your ships burned. Tell them how easily we could have killed you all and how we chose mercy instead. Tell them that the prey has become the predator, and the predator should be very, very careful about what it hunts. Wanted to speak. He wanted to say something proud, something defiant, but the words would not come. He had nothing left but shame and survival. Your ship has enough power to reach the nearest outpost, told him. We have disabled your weapons and your long-range communications, but your life support and basic engines still function. You will limp home like a wounded animal, and everyone who sees you will know what happened. And my warriors, asked, the ones you captured. They will be treated according to the laws of war, fed, housed, given medical care. When our governments establish proper diplomatic channels, they will be returned. We are not monsters, Commander. We never were. You simply made the mistake of thinking that peaceful means powerless. She turned to someone off-screen, cut the restraining field on his engines, let him go. Sub-Commander appeared beside, having survived the battle by sheer luck. Her face was pale, her hands bloody from trying to help wounded crew members. She stared at the human captain with a mixture of fear and something that might have been respect. Why? Asked suddenly. Why let us live? We killed your people. You could destroy us right now. Looked at her for a long moment. Because dead enemies cannot learn. Dead enemies cannot change. Dead enemies cannot tell stories. She paused. And because we are better than what you did to us. We have to be. The moment we become like you, we lose something worth more than victory. The communication channel closed and stood in silence as the tooth of victory slowly powered up its remaining engines. The ship groaned and shuddered, barely holding together, but it began to move, away from the graveyard of their fleet, toward home. Through the viewport, watched the human fortress grow smaller. It was still lit up, its weapons still tracking his ship, ready to fire if he tried anything. But it did not shoot. It simply watched him crawl away. What do we do now? Asked quietly. We do what she said. We go home, we tell them everything. They will not believe us. A human ship destroying our fleet. They will say we are lying. They will say we are cowards who fled from battle. shook his head. Then I will show them the recordings. I will show them the wreckage. I will show them this broken ship and these dead warriors. He looked at his second officer with haunted eyes. They will believe, and then they will decide whether to continue poking the beast that just showed us its teeth. Back on the captain watched the enemy ship limp away on her screen. She felt tired. She felt old. She felt the weight of every decision she had made. Lieutenant approached her. "Captain, the tooth of victory is leaving the sector. Should we continue tracking?" "Yes, make sure they get home safely." Looked surprised. "Safely." The message is more important than the messenger. If they die in space, no one learns anything. If they survive, everyone learns everything. She turned away from the screen and walked toward the exit. Begin cleanup operations. Recover any escape pods from the destroyed ships. Treat any survivors with respect. And tell the crew they did well today. "Yes, Captain," hesitated. "Captain, do you think it will work? Do you think they will stop attacking us?" Paused at the door. "I do not know. Maybe they will learn. Maybe they will need more lessons. But at least now they know what the lesson looks like." She walked off the bridge, leaving her officers to handle the aftermath. In her quarters, she sat down heavily and stared at the wall. On a small shelf sat photos of the people she had lost in her career. Friends, colleagues, soldiers who had died following her orders, and mixed among them photos sent by families of the civilian victims. Children smiling at cameras, not knowing their futures had already been stolen. 40,000, she whispered, "this was for you." She closed her eyes and allowed herself one moment of grief. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, and went back to work. The war was not over. It had barely begun. But humanity had finally shown its claws, and the universe would never forget. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Sector 77 Gamma. 3 months since a single human ship had destroyed a raiding fleet. 3 months since the universe changed forever. Commander stood before the High Council in the great chamber where the fate of empires was decided. He was not the same warrior who had left for that routine raid. His hair had turned gray. His hands trembled when he raised them. His eyes held shadows that would never leave. The council members sat in their elevated seats, looking down at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. He had shown them the recordings. He had shown them the sensor data. He had shown them the broken hull of the tooth of victory, still from the battle. "One ship," Elder said slowly. "You are telling us that one ship destroyed your entire fleet." "Yes, Elder. One ship that pretended to be dead. One ship that was designed as a trap. One ship that carries enough firepower to siege a planet. And you say there are 12 more." "That is what their captain told me. I have no reason to doubt her." The chamber fell silent. The implications were terrifying. For generations, the Empire had raided human settlements with ease. They had considered humans to be soft creatures, good only for labor and target practice. Now they learned that those soft creatures had been building weapons in the shadows, weapons designed specifically to destroy fleets. Elder, no relation to the sub-commander, leaned forward. "Why did they let you live? They could have killed you. They could have killed everyone." Closed his eyes, remembering Captain Park's face on the screen. "Because they wanted us to know. They wanted us to fear. Dead enemies do not spread warnings. They let me live so I could come here and tell you exactly what I am telling you now. Which is that we made a mistake. We poked something we did not understand. And now that something has decided to push back." The council debated for hours after left the chamber. Some wanted war. They argued that honor demanded vengeance for the destroyed ships. Others wanted peace. They argued that fighting a species that could build invisible fortresses was suicide. The debate grew heated, voices rising in anger and fear. Finally, Elder raised his hand for silence. "We will send diplomats," he declared. "We will request formal negotiations. We will learn how far the humans are willing to go, and we will decide our response based on what we learn." "And the raids?" someone asked. "Do we continue?" Looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow leaders. He thought about the recordings he had seen. The Blood Seeker cut in half by a single beam, the Iron Claw overwhelmed by missiles, the Tooth of Victory helpless and burning. "The raids stop," he said, "immediately. Until we understand what we are dealing with, we do not provoke the humans further." It was the first time in 200 years that the Empire had retreated from anything. On Earth, the news of the victory spread slowly at first, then exploded across every news channel and social network. The program, secret for 3 decades, was finally revealed to the public. People learned that their government had been building hidden fortresses, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Captain Park, now promoted to Admiral, stood before the United Earth Defense Council to give her official report. The chamber was filled with the most powerful humans in existence: presidents, generals, admirals, and diplomats. They all wanted to hear directly from the woman who had changed history. "The operation was successful," reported. 2 enemy cruisers destroyed, 1 disabled, 32 prisoners captured, 2 of our Marines killed in action, 7 wounded. The enemy commander was released with a message for his government." "And the response?" the council president asked. "Initial intelligence suggests they are in chaos. Their raids have stopped completely. They are withdrawing ships from disputed zones. They have requested diplomatic contact through neutral channels." Murmurs spread through the chamber. After years of attacks, years of burying civilians, years of feeling helpless, humanity finally had leverage. "Admiral Park," one of the generals spoke up, "do you believe the Empire will honor peace negotiations?" Considered the question carefully. "I believe they will negotiate because they are afraid. Fear is not the same as respect, and it is certainly not the same as friendship. But it is a beginning. Whether it leads to lasting peace depends on what we do next." "What do you recommend?" "Show strength but offer mercy. Make clear that we can hurt them, but also make clear that we prefer not to. Give them a path to peace that allows them to save face. And keep the fleet ready, because trust must be earned." The council voted unanimously to begin negotiations while maintaining military readiness. For the first time, humanity would meet the Empire as equals rather than victims. Far from Earth, the Still drifted in space, orbiting a quiet moon where it could watch and wait. The battle damage had been repaired. The crew had been rotated, fresh faces replacing those who needed rest. But the ship remained on alert, ready to move at a moment's notice. Sergeant Han walked through the detention level where the prisoners were held. The cells were clean, the food was adequate, and medical treatment was provided to anyone who needed it. She stopped at one cell where a young sat alone, staring at the wall. He was one of the boarding party members, barely old enough to be called a warrior. He had been terrified during the battle, and that terror had not left him. He looked up when appeared at his cell door. "Why are you here?" he asked in broken human language. "Checking on prisoners, making sure you are treated properly." "You should have killed us. That is what warriors expect." Leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe, but we are not. We do not kill because it is expected. We kill when we have to, and we stop when we can." "Why? It would be easier to just destroy your enemies." "Easier, yes, but wrong." She looked at the young warrior with something like pity. "You were taught that strength means cruelty, that mercy means weakness. But think about what happened here. We beat your fleet. We captured your warriors. We could have slaughtered everyone. Instead, we bandaged your wounds and fed you warm food. Which approach demonstrates more control, which shows more confidence?" The young had no answer. "Someday," continued, "you will go home. You will tell your people what you experienced. Maybe you will say humans are weak because we did not kill you. Or maybe you will say humans are terrifying because we could have killed you and chose not to. That choice says something about who we are." She walked away, leaving him to think. On the observation deck of the Admiral Park stood watching the stars. She had returned to the ship for a brief visit, wanting to see her crew and walk the corridors where history had been made. Lieutenant stood beside her, older now than he had been during the battle, carrying new responsibilities. "Do you think there will be peace?" he asked. Considered the question for a long time. "Peace is not something you find," she finally said. "It is something you build. Stone by stone, agreement by agreement, gesture by gesture. They attacked us because they thought we could not fight back. Now they know differently. That changes the calculation." But will they truly change? Will they stop seeing us as prey? Some will not. The ones who want war will still want war, but now they have to consider the cost, and that cost has become very high. She turned away from the window and looked at her ship. There was quiet now, its weapons stored, its crews resting. But beneath that peace was power, terrible power, waiting to be unleashed if necessary. "Keep the ship ready," she told. "Keep the crew trained. Hope for peace but prepare for war. That is what we do. That is who we are. And if war comes, then we do what we did before. We show our teeth. We fight with everything we have. And we try to remember, even in the worst moments, that the goal is not victory. The goal is a future where ships like this are no longer needed." She walked away from the observation deck, her footsteps echoing through the corridor. Behind her, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere out there, diplomats were meeting. Somewhere out there, warriors were reconsidering their choices. Somewhere out there, a universe was learning that the quiet species called humanity had been watching and waiting and building something terrible. They drifted in the darkness, a guardian in the void, silent, patient, ready. Humanity had shown what it could become when pushed too far. Now the universe would decide how to respond. But whatever came next, one thing was certain: no one would ever mistake human kindness for human weakness again. The beast had awakened, and it would always be watching.